This is my review of My Hero Academia, Chapter 236, Tenko Shimura Origins Part 2, and... Oh, Jesus Christ. This was so much worse than I was expecting. I mean, I figured, they'd show him turning to dust or whatever. No, that's not what happened. They literally turned into piles of blood and visceral body parts. What the freak was with this chapter? This was Tokyo Ghoul level stuff. Seriously, what the freak is with this chapter? I mean, the dog was the hardest part for me, honestly. That was just... Oh, Jesus Christ, that was bad. Then his sister, who came out to apologize, which, I appreciated. I said last week, if she had just come out and apologized, none of this would have happened. But turns out she was just about 30 seconds late. Seriously, she worked up the nerve to come out 30 seconds later, apologize for all of this. He probably wouldn't have killed her. Then his mother and his grandparents. Turns out he was always able to pass the decay through the ground or whatever, but just forgot about it, which is interesting. I get it, the trauma and everything made him forget, but yeah, they just all turned to dust. Oh, God, actually, what? I wish they turned to dust. Dust, decay, all that. That would have been so much better to this. He's just drenched in all of their blood by this point. I mean, what the hell happened to this series? Seriously, I get, if he had just turned to dust, it would have been less traumatic, and he would have said, oh, well, that shouldn't have traumatized him too much. But no, he is just literally drenched in their blood, and it is just terrifying. It is horrifying. It is disturbing to me on many levels. Oh, God, then his father shows up. I hope you can live a life full of smiles and joy. And, yeah, he's just broken right here. I'm a little ashamed of it. I actually enjoyed seeing how hurt he is, considering this is basically all his fault. I know he said it was his sister's fault for not apologizing, but I meant more as in, she could have stopped it. I mean, this guy was literally responsible for basically all of this happening. And his response is to try to beat his son over the head. I get he's trying to, knock him out so he'll stop destroying everything, but not the best move you could have made right here, honestly. I mean, up to this point, Tenko was more about getting help than, actually murdering anybody, but this last hit from his father this just broke him. It reminded him of all the abuse he suffered in this house. Everything that happened to him was because of his father. He attacked him with the desire to kill, and in that moment he was filled with pure, maddening ecstasy, as he murdered his own father and his father's house. There's something I've always enjoyed in fiction, and that's seeing how a monster is made. And there's almost always a step in the process where, after taking certain steps, you have to kill the one you love most, which arguably either his dog, his sister, or his mom, but by the point he's killed all of them, he's reached his father, there's no love in his heart, he's broken. He has reached a point of no return where he has turned himself into a monster. I mean, look at him. He's basically on all fours, laughing like a hyena, covered in blood. He is quite literally a monster here. Though it can't be forgotten that he is certainly crying in this scene. He is still saddened by it, but as a coping mechanism, he just had to accept the rage and the anger and let it block out all the other feelings, block out his depression, his sadness, his mourning for all of those he loved who he has killed, his guilt. Instead, he simply had to embrace it for his own sanity, for his own well-being. Otherwise, he literally could not have gone on. In a sense, this madness, this everything was a coping mechanism. He justified it to himself. He said, I was right to kill them because of the way they treated me in this house, because of the way this house treated me, because of the way the house my father built treated me. And so he justified it to himself and allowed the rage to overwhelm him because it was easier than allowing the feelings. And it was better than allowing himself just to fall apart in grief and sorrow and guilt. So moving on past all of that, because it's way too sad to talk about any further, there was a interesting parallel between this chapter and the last that I didn't really notice on my first read, but I mean, take a look at how all the characters die. His sister, she comes out trying to help him, trying to apologize, but ultimately turns her back on him, just like she did last chapter. His mother sees he's going through horror, through hell, and tries to comfort him. The last shot of her is literally with her arms outstretched, trying to hold him, telling him it's going to be okay. His grandparents are basically observers, watching from a distance as all this happened. Just like how they watched his father beat him without saying or doing anything. They're just in the background when he kills them. And finally, his father's response is abuse. He attempts to knock him over the head. I mean, I'd like to believe he's trying to knock him out so they can, call the police, get him the help he needs, get him to stop going out of control, suppress his quirks somehow. But still, no matter how justified it may have been, it's still abuse, and just as it was back then. And the final shots. The house that kindly rejected him, he rejected with violence. He brought it crashing to the ground. I said last week that I really thought this house needed to be destroyed just to complete the symbolism here, and I was definitely right. The house is destroyed, the yard was destroyed, nothing remains of what it was. Honestly, I'd be amazed if there was a house there even now, or if he just did so much damage that it just couldn't be, that nothing could be built there. So yeah, that was a dark, dark, dark chapter. Next week, I guess we're gonna see him be adopted by All for One. I'm kind of curious about what happens next. It's essentially a giant explosion with 4 corpses piled up around the house. I feel like heroes would have had to show up to this and figure out what was going on, and he might have even killed those heroes. Would he have fled? Would he have just passed out from exhaustion? I mean, the flashbacks we've seen of him, he's sitting in the street begging for food, and no one comes to help him. I have to imagine a hero would have come to this scene. I mean, the neighbors obviously would have stayed away because, they think, oh, hero's coming. But someone should have shown up. Also kind of curious about how the doctor managed to get the hands. I mean, it kind of makes sense the hands survived, kinda, given that, they just explode into pieces. But it's still kind of weird that all their hands just happen to be okay. So, yeah, very weird chapter, very dark chapter. I mean, I get now why he became a villain, why he let the madness overcome him, just because, like I said a few times already, it was just easier than accepting the grief. I theorized in a video a while back that I thought Eri was going to revert him to the kid or revert one of the hands he has back to that of his sister, but I don't think that would stop him anymore. I think if he truly, let go of his madness, for his rage and all that, he would just quite literally break and probably kill himself instantly. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. After seeing all of this, everything he's gone through, everything he did, any chance of redemption for him? I'm thinking no, unless, we introduce time travel or he just reverts him back to a kid. But yeah, be sure to like, subscribe. Until next time.
Peace.